Hey there riders, MotoGeno Chris here today. Have you ever heard of the Harley-Davidson Softail Tour? I certainly hadn't until the opportunity arose thanks to Harley-Davidson Australia. Imagine testing much of the Softail range with dedicated sessions at the track, in my case at Sydney's Eastern Creek. It's a truly memorable experience, and if you're intrigued by the new Softail models or are thinking about an upgrade, keep in touch with your local Harley dealer in case this rolls into your town. Now, the Softail range was updated back in 2018 with a major overhaul, including taking over from the Dyna range, and now boasts the Milwaukee Eight engine in both a 107 cubic inch and 114 cubic inch version. Now, I'd been highly impressed with the FXDR 114 already, which is basically Harley-Davidson's hypercruiser option, and I was really keen to see what the rest of the range offered. Now, updates include a new frame and monoshock suspension setup on these models, a decent weight reduction as well over the outgoing models, and a shower front fork. Then you've got all the individual models and their specific setups, which are quite unique in a lot of ways. Now, you might ask why you test these machines at the track, and to an extent you do have a point, but at the same time you're in a controlled environment, not worrying about cars, and able to properly compare the often vast differences between these models, which, if you're thinking about adding one of these Softail bikes to your garage, is a pretty hard to beat opportunity. There's just no other way of really testing the Softail range in this way and getting such an idea about the very kind of unique experiences on offer by these bikes. And on top of that, you're getting an absolutely unforgettable experience, so what's not to like? Obviously, in some ways, the smooth track surface is a forgiving medium for the suspension on these models, which is one of the updates, but it does offer an exceptional chance to properly test out the performance on offer, not to mention the brake packages, with the 107 and 114 Milwaukee 8 powerplants offering plenty of torque and go. The track also offers the ideal place to test out the handling on offer, particularly between the different Softail models, with the 240 section rear tyre fitted to some, particularly noticeable here, particularly in comparison to when I tested the FXDR 114 out on the road. Cornering clearance is also an interesting point of note between the large profile rear tyre models and those equipped with floorboards, offering a really great point of comparison that will be hard to find out on the road without extensive miles on each bike and finding some pretty gnarly twisties to take them through. Now, I started out on the Street Bob, which was right up my alley, featuring the Milwaukee 8 107 with 106 foot-pounds of torque and quite a stripped-down overall theme, along with forward controls and more traditional tyre sizes. That lent the Street Bob arguably the most ideal package at the track, with good ground clearance, particularly with those forward foot controls and no floorboards, a comfortable perch on the deep seat, and conversely a more stretched out reach to the bars. I came away really impressed and was surprised by how much fun the Street Bob was around Sydney Motorsport Park's Southern Loop. Obviously the pace wasn't anything like a sports bike, but then you don't need to be going light speed to have plenty of fun, and the Street Bob was more than capable of generating the thrills. In fact, I liked the Street Bob so much that when I got the chance, I went back out for another session. It was a bit of a surprise because I tested out the FXDR 114 on the road and had an absolute hoot and thought this would be my favourite model. However, testing a wider variety of the Softail models actually allowed me to really sample the differences, which are quite significant in some comparisons, and basically just made me realise how great all of the different machines are in their own way. Now, the FXDR is a real standout with that 240 section rear coming to the fore at the track, where the higher lean angles do make for a more noticeable handling characteristic as you get out to the edge of the tyre and need to muscle the bike over a bit more. That was in contrast to riding the bike on the road, where I had a lot of fun through the local twisties, keeping the bike more upright and taking advantage of the copious amounts of torque on offer, plus the high spec front brake setup. The FXDR is certainly the Softail model that looks best to my eyes, with futuristic lines and the specifications that only reinforce not only all of that attitude, but the price tag it demands. It's hard to beat giving the FXDR some wide open throttle coming into that short back straight on the southern circuit, out of the corner with the bike pushing wide on the throttle before hitting the straight and coming up to the crest and just getting ready to break down into those S's. Another of the Softail models which really surprised me was the Sport Glide, a stylish touring orientated option with contrast cut eye-catching wheels and plenty of chrome, not to mention that mini headlight fairing and panniers. Jumping onto the Sport Glide, that narrow rear wheel immediately sharpens up steering in comparison to the FXDR, and the forward controls offer good levels of ground clearance and are certainly my preference over the floorboard options. A mix of stripped back, minimalist style is easy to appreciate on the Sport Glide, with styling that's arguably as eye-catching as the FXDR, but in a more traditional package. A single front disc wasn't a limiting factor either, and despite the panniers, the Sport Glide was a great bike to do some laps around Sydney Motorsport Park on, and in many ways handled probably most similarly to the Street Bob, with that quite stripped down and agile handling package on offer. I also had a session on the Deluxe, which again features a narrow rear wheel and is a bit more of an old school blinged out model to my eye, with an eye-catching triple headlight design. Ground clearance is a notable point at the track on this model though, where carrying undue speed into the corners could see the limitations become obvious. Jumping on a motorcycle where running into a corner too hot only to discover the floorboards would limit your cornering line was a bit of a new one, to be honest, as on the road on these type of bikes in the past, a more relaxed pace really doesn't make this issue anywhere near as noticeable. Of course, when you're running more of a track spirited pace, even on a cruiser, this is going to be something that you notice, and it's not really something that I would count against the bike. I mean, obviously the different bikes are just aimed at different types of riders and have their own kind of limitations on each of them, so it's just a very, very interesting point of comparison, as I've said. So overall, I had an absolute hoot at the Harley Softail Tour. There's really no better way to get a look at the differences between these models, and it makes it easy to really appreciate just how unique each of these bikes is. Not to mention this being a truly special experience, and like I said, if you're thinking about a Softail model, check with your local dealer about whether the Softail Tour is coming into town near you. It's just an awesome thing to take part in, and there's just no better way of testing these bikes and getting a bit of an idea. You might want to go for a bit more of a road test on some of these bikes after doing this, after picking out which particular model you think is the one for you, but you cannot beat spending a bit of time at the track on these bikes and just doing something that you'd never do on the road. Now, if you've got any questions, let me know in the comments, and don't forget to sub and hit that notification bell or leave a like. As always, stay safe out there. Thanks.